Consider where you stood 12 months ago. Recall that suffocating sensation of being trapped in endless loops, making identical choices, questioning whether growth was even possible for someone like you. Yet something has shifted inside you recently. That shift isn't coincidental. That's precisely how evolution announces itself. Through subtle but undeniable awakenings that whisper you cannot remain dormant forever. What follows will reveal the unmistakable signals that consciousness sends when it's preparing for expansion. The real question becomes, will you honor these messages when they arrive? Consider why these words resonate with your current state of being. Among countless distractions competing for your attention, among all the mental noise clouding your awareness, this particular message has captured your focus. You might rationalize it as mere chance, another random encounter in your digital wandering. But something deeper recognizes truth when it appears. Universal timing operates beyond human logic. Existence has methods of delivering exactly what we need precisely when our hearts have opened enough to receive it, even after years of spiritual deafness. Most assume that personal revolution arrives gently, like dawn breaking gradually across the horizon. However, if you've ever approached genuine metamorphosis, you understand it feels anything but peaceful. It resembles earthquake tremors. It feels like being suspended between your dying identity and your emerging self. When that tension builds, it's natural to doubt everything. You question, are these authentic signs, or am I creating meaning where none exists? Is this genuine awakening or another self-deception? That internal struggle represents the calling. It doesn't arrive polished or comfortable. It manifests as sacred friction. Reflect on your most recent promise of personal change that dissolved into nothing. Perhaps something seemingly minor, like committing to morning meditation, then abandoning it after 3 days of distraction. The following week, you felt that familiar disappointment, swearing tomorrow would bring discipline, only to repeat the abandonment cycle. That restless pattern weighs heavily, yet it becomes our default comfort zone. And often we only recognize its exhausting nature when our consciousness begins craving authentic transformation. Research in behavioral psychology consistently demonstrates that individuals report heightened anxiety immediately before breakthrough moments. It's as though the psyche protests violently before releasing its grip on limiting beliefs. That chaotic, uncomfortable transition isn't evidence of failure. It's actually confirmation that profound recalibration is occurring. And that explains why you're experiencing this inner restlessness right now, because the foundation you've built your identity upon is beginning to dissolve. Imagine someone who consistently avoids that discomfort. They witness the dissolution. They sense the invitations, but they suppress them completely. They rationalize that circumstances aren't optimal or that they're manufacturing drama. Seasons pass, sometimes decades, and mysteriously they discover themselves confronting identical obstacles again. The same limiting beliefs, the same emotional wounds, the same spiritual lessons returning in slightly modified presentations. It's as though existence compassionately guides them in circles until they're prepared to embrace what they previously rejected. You can likely identify similar moments in your personal history when you ignored the discomfort and discovered that identical challenges returned with amplified intensity. And this reveals where the gravity of choice becomes apparent. What occurs if you continue dismissing the invitation? What if existence keeps cycling you through identical classrooms, presenting similar curricula repeatedly? It's disturbing to contemplate the possibility of remaining imprisoned in those patterns indefinitely. But here lies the deeper truth. The universe operates like the most patient mentor you've ever encountered. It never abandons your potential. Even when you attempt to sleep through the teachings, it repeats the curriculum with compassion, challenging you gently, then more directly until you finally awaken and choose to engage. So, if you're noticing yourself feeling differently lately, that isn't random occurrence. That isn't simply emotional fluctuation. That represents one of the primary indicators. Your previous existence no longer contains you adequately. It's like discovering the first fracture in a prison wall you've inhabited unconsciously. You don't need complete clarity about what lies beyond that fracture for it to hold significance, because simply recognizing it means you're no longer unconscious to your own evolution. And that recognition alone proves transformation has commenced. Now the crucial question emerges: what unfolds from here? Once you acknowledge that the invitation is genuine, you'll begin noticing how existence validates it. Subtle confirmations that manifest like breadcrumbs along your journey. And that's where the process becomes truly fascinating. Now, I need to pause briefly to acknowledge something that feels important to mention here. If these insights are creating shifts in your awareness, and you feel called to deepen this exploration of consciousness and transformation, there's tremendous value in allowing these conversations to continue growing. Your engagement doesn't just support this content, it signals to the digital ecosystem that genuine spiritual dialogue matters in our world. How existence validates your transformation. Have you observed how certain concepts, phrases, or even melodies begin appearing repeatedly in your experience? Like encountering it during casual conversation, then hearing it referenced in a documentary, and later discovering it highlighted in a book you randomly opened. Initially, it seems coincidental, but after multiple occurrences, you cannot ignore asking yourself, why does this particular message keep pursuing me? This represents the subtle communication of meaningful alignment. It's how existence gently touches your shoulder and whispers, become present because something significant is shifting. When individuals enter new phases of growth, these delicate signals often intensify considerably. They may not arrive dramatically or obviously, but they possess enough clarity to capture your conscious attention. These serve as validations that you're not wandering without direction, even during moments when uncertainty dominates. Instead, it resembles following a pathway marked with subtle indicators. The universe doesn't provide detailed maps with explicit directions. It places small guideposts to illuminate the way forward, and you remain responsible for noticing them. The challenging aspect is that most people doubt these experiences immediately. We dismiss them as meaningless coincidence, or convince ourselves we're creating connections that don't exist. This skepticism makes sense because our rational minds are programmed to analyze everything. But how often have you witnessed 4 or 5 messages, all pointing toward the same aspect of your growth, like spiritual practices, authentic relationships, or creative expression, and felt that recognition spark within? That spark represents consciousness awakening. Even when logic can explain it away, the resonance it creates feels distinctly different. That resonance serves as the signal that it transcends mere chance. Consider this scenario. One afternoon, you discover a passage about spiritual rebirth. Later that evening, a colleague spontaneously shares their experience of leaving behind everything that felt inauthentic. The next morning, you encounter social media content featuring that identical concept: time for soul awakening. 3 separate sources from completely unrelated contexts, yet they weave together like unified guidance. That's how spiritual breadcrumbs function. Gradually, they guide you towards something more expansive than you could have imagined independently. Neuroscientists often explain that the brain naturally detects patterns when you're already maintaining focused awareness. From spiritual perspectives, people understand this heightened sensitivity as divine alignment, meaning your internal reality and external circumstances are finally harmonizing. The scientific and mystical interpretations may employ different terminology, but both indicate the same phenomenon. When you're prepared for evolution, your perception transforms and the world around you immediately mirrors it. What once remained invisible becomes unmistakable. There's an account of someone who experienced unexpected unexpected loss of their life partner. During those months of profound grief, they felt almost consumed by emotional darkness. Yet gradually, meaningful signs began manifesting around them. They would encounter books about healing, overhear stories of resilience in unexpected places, even discover songs about release and renewal. Individually, these moments appeared insignificant, but collectively they formed a golden thread pulling them forward, demonstrating that even within loss, a pathway of growth remained available to them. Those signs didn't eliminate the pain, but they clarified that a new chapter was forming from the foundation of the old one. It raises the question, what if the signs exist not only to validate that circumstances are changing, but also to test whether you'll demonstrate courage to respond to them? What if every repeated message functions like a sacred invitation, and your willingness to acknowledge it represents the actual moment of decision? It transcends simply recognizing the pattern. It's about whether you move toward it or retreat into familiar territory. That's the transformative power these subtle synchronicities possess. So, here's where everything connects. The very reality that you're receiving this message right now represents one of those validations. Among all the digital chaos online, you discovered this guidance, and it harmonizes with something deep within you. That connection isn't superficial. It indicates you're already aligned with the transformation occurring in your experience. It has commenced. Whether you completely perceive it or not. But here's the essential element. For the new to completely establish itself, the old cannot continue occupying space. The universe can transmit signs continuously, but if your energy remains invested in holding on to what no longer serves, those signs have nowhere to take root. That's why the next step transcends simply noticing the validations. You must decide what you're willing to release so you can step into the existence calling you. You understand what most people never realize. The most challenging aspect of entering a new existence isn't cultivating something fresh. It's developing the courage to release what no longer belongs. Everyone embraces the concept of reinvention, of opening to a more authentic chapter. But very few discuss the clearing that must occur before the new story can be written. A lotus doesn't bloom if it remains buried in old mud. And your personal evolution operates identically. You cannot maintain what depletes you and expect something vibrant to flourish in its place. Consider it carefully. Every transformation demands space to unfold. If your thoughts, your energy, and even your daily patterns remain entangled in outdated cycles, where does the new chapter take root? It's like attempting to carry excessive baggage through a narrow passage. You simply won't move through unless you're willing to set something down. And isn't that precisely what we resist most intensely? Not the moving forward, but the releasing. Releasing feels profound because it challenges everything familiar. For instance, you recognize that relationship you've maintained from obligation, even though every interaction leaves you feeling diminished. There's that comfortable pattern of avoidance, remaining in bed those extra minutes, or postponing the creative work you know seeks expression. Or perhaps it's more significant. A life direction you once believed was destined for you. Like a profession you invested in for decades until you realized it doesn't honor who you've become. That's the internal resistance. It's not that we desire to continue existing in patterns that diminish us. It's that the fear of leaving them feels more intense than the vision of what awaits. Picture someone clearing out their corporate desk for the final time. They're not abandoning security carelessly. It represents years of steady income, familiar routines, a sense of stability. But what remains after every workday? Chronic tension, restless sleep, and the persistent feeling that their spirit is exchanging authenticity for financial security. Walking away terrifies, but also liberates. Fear and freedom intertwined. That person is entering unknown territory, yes, but they're also creating space where existence can finally deliver something aligned. And if that seems dramatic, observe nature for wisdom. A butterfly dissolves completely in its cocoon, not because it chooses to, but because it cannot emerge without complete surrender of what it was. The dissolution feels vulnerable, sometimes terrifying, but the alternative is suffocating inside what no longer contains its essence. Humans might not literally dissolve physically, but every significant change asks us to do the equivalent, to release the version of ourselves we've transcended, even when we feel exposed without those old identities. Behavioral researchers have studied this resistance and term it loss aversion. Simply stated, most people fear releasing something familiar much more than they anticipate gaining something unknown. That's why leaving a dysfunctional situation can feel overwhelming, even though rationally we understand it benefits us. Our minds attach to what's predictable, even the suffering, because it feels manageable. It's like choosing the discomfort of the cage, because at least you already understand its limitations. But ask yourself, what happens if you grasp too tightly? Do you find yourself walking the same circle repeatedly, watching possibilities pass while rehearsing the same lessons? If you never open your palm, can anything ever be received? That's the profound question the universe seems to offer us. Are you willing to create the space for what seeks to arrive? Now, imagine someone who has recently ended a depleting situation. The silence that follows stings initially. The evenings feel hollow. The routine unfamiliar without the usual drama and heaviness. Yet within that stillness comes something unexpected. They notice a peace in their heart they haven't experienced in years. Interactions feel more authentic. Mornings begin without the familiar dread. Even the way they breathe feels less constrained. That peace serves as the first evidence they're not simply ending something, they're beginning something genuine. And perhaps that's how you can understand your own process right now. Every ache of release, every moment of fear, every emotion felt is not evidence of mistake. It's a sign of birth. You're not walking away aimlessly. You're opening the door to the existence calling you. That makes the choice sacred. And as we come to a close, here's a simple practice for you. If you've felt this shift stirring within you and recognize the truth in these words, seal this moment with intention. In the comments below, share just one word that captures what you're ready to release or what you're calling in. Let it be your declaration, your commitment, a stake in the ground marking where your transformation begins. Because right now, in this very moment, you are the one chosen to step through this doorway. Your new chapter isn't approaching. It's already writing itself through you.